Okay, so we are now live. Welcome back to another episode of Kherk Roldan SEO Show. This is the show for SEO, e-commerce, and digital marketing. Kherk Roldan SEO Show was launched to deliver high-quality insight, best advice, and tips from the top experts to the community. In today's episode, we have Kyle Roof. Thank you so much, Kyle, for having time for this interview. I appreciate it, and it is a pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you right now. So before we start with our interview, and for those who don't know Kyle yet, so Kyle is responsible for the development and implementation of all SEO techniques used by High Voltage SEO Agency and PageOptimizer Pro. He is also the co-founder of Internet Marketing Gold, and Kyle SEO techniques and discoveries are followed by many SEO professional and business leaders. So Kyle has been featured in Authority Hacker podcast, Ryan Stewart Blueprint, SEO, or Search Engine Journal, and one of the main speakers at Chiang Mai SEO, Inorbit, SEO Rockstar, and many more. So how is it going, Kyle?
That's good. Many thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so Kyle, how did you start your SEO career? How did you learn SEO?
I started off as an attorney, and I was a trial attorney and decided I really didn't like that very much. I took some time off and I moved to South Korea. And while in South Korea, I started doing web design and development. And then decided it would be a great idea to get recurring income because I just heard about this thing called SEO.
All
You
right.
could get monthly recurring income. And very long story, but the people that we had hired to do SEO were gone. I needed to keep these clients so I could pay their rent next month. So I needed to learn SEO that day so that I could survive. and so that's what I did. And so then I was doing freelance SEO. And then that turned into the agency that I have now, High Voltage SEO, that I started with my business partner, Andrew Steven. And I think we started that in 2013. So
Wow.
that's been going for a bit. And we have an office in Phoenix, Arizona, in the US. We have an office in Berlin, Germany, and we have an office in Melbourne, Australia. And so we do local to national to international to e-com to everything in between.
Awesome. Guys, so if you have more questions for Kyle, just drop it in the comment section and I will read it all. Okay, so Kyle, in your point of view, does social media affect Google rankings? So if so, how?
Well, just having a social media account isn't going to help anything. And getting likes and stuff like that, I don't think are going to help anything. If there is a factor that could be considered a backlink, it might be a share.
Right.
As you be getting shares across a platform, which there are their own individual links. I think the most beneficial thing that you would get out of anything with social media would be the traffic that you could get. It's hard to pin down if traffic, what type of impact traffic has, and perhaps user metrics have. But if you like those things, social media is a great way to get them because you should be getting people from that are interested in what your site is, interested in your niche, and they should be people that you want on your site. And having them clicking around is always, it can't be a bad thing. So worst case, it's nothing, but on the upside, maybe you're getting some value out of it there.
All right. So how has Google and SEO changed over the last 5 years?
If you're in affiliate marketing or those types of things, I think you can see a pretty obvious push for Google preferring real businesses that can say who they are, where they're located, that they have a local number, that they're people that you can contact, the owners of the site if you have problems. So a preference towards Google for businesses that appear to be legitimate, because Google can't walk to your business. Google can't walk in and be like, oh yeah, hey, these guys are legit. It has to look for signals that they've associated with a real company. So if you're running an affiliate site, my advice would be to make yourself as real as possible. Establish a business. You should have a business address because you should be paying taxes. You should be doing those things above board. So they shouldn't be too tricky to do, but you should, I think, go out of your way to make sure that you are legitimate. The other things, though, a question I often get asked is, how do you stay on top of Google, or how do you stay, Google's changing all the time. And what I found is that the core of Google maybe 70% never changes. 70, 80%, if you think about a bell curve, that middle part is going to remain the same. It's the stuff on the fringes, that 10% or 15% on either side, is what Google really goes after when they do updates, because that's where people are living in that fringe space where they're trying to, take a shortcut or to do something that might be against Google's guidelines. And I think that's what Google cares about more than anything. But, people really don't complain about Google results. The people that complain about Google results are SEOs, and then maybe some business owners. But the people that are actually using Google are happy to use it, and that's why Google has the market share that it does. So there's really not a cost effective reason for Google to change what they're doing. I think what their mindset is let's try to get those people that are trying to cheat the system. But that part, the core part of Google that is very successful and gives very great results and people are very happy to use, I don't think they want to tinker with that because it's not worth it. If it's already successful for their consumer, then there's no reason to change or do too much to alter what those results are.
Yeah, I believe that one as well. So I'm pretty curious about how you managed to rank a website using Lorem Ipsum. So how do you do that, by the way?
Sure. It's important to understand that Google isn't human. Google is so powerful and so amazing, and perhaps one of the greatest things that's ever been created. And because it's so powerful, we want to think of Google as a human being. That Google can read. And Google can look at a website, and Google even has the ability to look. Google can look at a website and say, okay, this is good, and this one's not. That's not possible because at the end of the day, Google is an algorithm. An algorithm is math-based. And so when it comes to ranking, you really need to give the algorithm the math that it wants. That's the key. So what I showed with the Lorem Ipsum page was that if you give the algorithm the math that it wants, you can be successful. So that means you've got your target keyword, putting that keyword a specific amount of times in specific places. And then variations of that keyword, which could be extremely close synonyms or phrase match if you have a longer keyword, putting those, again, doing the math, figuring out how many times you need to put those in certain places, certain amount of times, and then also contextual terms, so that Google can understand what this page is about, and putting those terms in places. And so what I did is I had a page that was just Lorem Ipsum. It was the length that I needed it to be, and then I copied and pasted in my keyword, copy and pasted my variations, copy and paste in my contextual terms, LSI, if you like that term, into specific places a specific amount of times, and lo and behold, that page ranked number 1. So it's all Lorem Ipsum, but then it's the terms placed a specific number of time in specific places was the key. Oh no.
All right, so I guess I lost you. Okay, can you please repeat the last thing that you said, Kyle?
It was just putting doing the math and putting the keyword, its variations, and its contextual terms a specific amount of times in specific places. Obviously, you need to write good content. You need people to convert. But that's a different concept than rank. Rank is the math part of it, and then conversion and getting satisfied users and stuff like that. That's where the good content comes in, and that's what you should be doing. But to be perfectly honest, if you're answering a question or you're providing content that people need, usually the math is an edit at the end, because you should be writing good content, and it shouldn't be too tricky to get something close to what the algorithm likes just by writing a well-structured page, writing a page that follows an outline and provides good information. The SEO part kind of should just be an edit at the end to get the page where it needs to be to satisfy what Google would like.
Right. So I agree with you with that one as well. It's just that about providing value to the readers, and by doing that, Google will like it as well. So I know that on-page is a huge topic, but I'm very curious, what are your best practices for on-page SEO?
Well, there are places that are more important than other places on a page. And the top places to put a keyword haven't changed in quite some time, and that's your URL, your meta title, your H1, and in paragraph tags. And if you were to put your target keyword one time in all of those places, you've probably done 70% of SEO. That's what it comes down to. Like, don't overthink it. People really want to overthink Google and how it works, and they want to get, we should do this and that. But if you were just to do that, put your keyword in those 4 places, you're going to be successful. And then from there, then it's tweaking, and then it's getting all those other signals or doing all those other techniques that you want to do. But often people miss that first step. So get that out of the way, get that right, and then get fancy and creative after that. It would be my number one tip for On-Page.
Right, I agree. So aside adding keywords to those placements, I remember Google request indexing tool back after 69-day outage. So how does affect our indexing without getting it back? Kyle?
I'm sorry, Google doing what?
Yeah, the Google request indexing, they are now back, right, after 69 days of outage. So how does affect our indexing without getting it back?
Well, I think it's back now. Is it not? Like the request index is back, but I'm not sure that I would really. You can't rely on it. They could take it away. I don't know how effective it really is. But the number one that Google likes to discover a page is from a referring link. So you have a brand new page. Google wants to find that page by linking from another page. That's the way that Google. That's it. That's the preferred method. But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be outside your own site. It can be something that's within your site, and that's where an HTML sitemap is very valuable. An HTML sitemap is, it's like usually a link in the footer that says sitemap, and you go to that, and it's a tree showing all the links on your site. That's a very effective way for Google to find the pages in your site, because you can then use that URL and you can request indexing on that, or you can have it inspected, or you can put it through the mobile friendly test so that Google is actually crawling that page from a few different ways. And that's a good way to get your site indexed. So that Google will be crawling the pages, because Google will go to that one page, your HTML sitemap, and then from there it will go deeper into your site. And it's a good way to get Google to crawl the pages that you want crawled.
All right, sounds awesome. So one of your findings was there are correlations, consistencies in particular ranking signals on top of the pages, right? So among 350 scientific experiments of Google algorithm, what are the most important ones for you?
The series that I did that was most important was seeing that Google can't read. Grammar is not a ranking factor. Spelling's not a ranking factor. Using bad words on a page isn't a ranking factor. Reading score, like the Flesch-Kincaid number that you get, or there are several other tools you can use for reading score. None of those are ranking factors. That was a big step forward. And then the series that I worked on, finding that your H1 is more powerful than an H3. It is more important. It does have more weight, so that there are different signal areas on the site that are more important than others. And then the last big set that was also extremely important was seeing that there isn't an SEO currency. You can't trade one signal for another signal, or one factor for another factor. So let's say you decide not to use an H1. You really can't make that up with more H2s. You can't substitute one factor and just do more of another factor. That's not how it works. So you do need to, for example, getting into the H1 is extremely important because it's in group A. It's one of the most important factor areas. You can't make up for not doing that by doing more somewhere else. That isn't how the system works. So there isn't an SEO currency. You can't trade or do more or less in one or the other to balance them. You need to do a certain amount in all of them is really the main idea. So those different kind of factors, I think if you get that mindset, you'll end up doing better SEO. Google can't read. Those things there are a lot of things that aren't ranking factors that a lot of people talk about. There are signals that are more important than others, and there isn't an SEO currency. You can't trade one signal or one factor for another factor.
All right. So you mentioned H1 is extremely important, and I see a lot of people doing or optimizing multiple H1 tag to their website or product pages. How can this affect on-page SEO, Kyle?
Well, you think about what Google will be using the H1 for. The H1 is typically the title of the page. And because Google can't read as a human being, it needs to understand what this page is about. And one of the clearest ways you can tell Google what the page is about is within the title. So while it's not, I think, something that if you have multiple H1s, you're never going to rank, because that's not true. But you're making it more difficult on yourself. Why make it harder? Why make it harder for Google to understand what this page is about, or what you're trying to accomplish, or why Google should rank it? Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't handicap yourself by saying, I'm going to do this intentionally wrong, or I'm going to do this thing that isn't helpful.
Right.
You're just giving yourself a disadvantage. Can you be successful? Absolutely. Should you do it? Probably not, because you're just making it harder for yourself to rank.
Awesome. Okay. And what are your thoughts about on-page SEO can rank keywords without link building? So I asked that because a lot of people do on-page without providing link building. So yeah, I just want to ask you a question about it.
Yeah, I think, well, On-Page will do the heavy lifting. It'll do the majority of the work. The one thing you control more than anything, the one thing you actually control is your own website. So you can take care of the technical issues so that they're perfect. You can get your on-page where it needs to be, and you can take a page as far as it can go with on-page. What I found is that the more technical errors that your site has, the more that you're shooting yourself in the foot, that's more links that you need. And that becomes a more expensive way to do SEO, a more frustrating way to do SEO, because you control it less. You don't control somebody else's website. You don't control those links. You can't really know ultimately what Google likes or doesn't like when it comes to those links. So your rankings can be more volatile. So I would take care of everything you can on your site. See how far that takes you. You'll see where you get stuck, where, okay, this page has gone as far as it's going to go. And then at that point, that's when I would worry about backlinks, or then I'd be focusing more on backlinks and less on my on page. So get as far as you can with those things that you can control, and then bring in those other signals later.
Awesome. Okay. You said on-page will do the heavy lifting. And I'm curious, what is the site speed you recommend when running a website?
Well, I don't really worry too much about the site speed, but I do like TTFB, time to first byte. And I think you can keep that under 1 second, and you're probably just fine from there. If you're doing that correctly, then pretty much everything else lines up, and you're just fine.
Awesome. So yeah, right now I'm making my store to load not more than 3 seconds, and also make a good improvement for my traffic as well. And it really
Nice.
helps, right?
You can see,
yeah.
well, I don't think it's necessarily the one thing, like that's not it, but if you're doing those things to get there, there's a lot that you have to do, and you end up covering or taking care of a lot of issues the websites have by kind of focusing on that one thing. You're going to fix several things to get there, and that's where, somewhere in there is the good. And at the end of the day, you also want a site that people want to be on. Nobody wants to be on an e-com site that's taking forever to load, all of its images. So, you increase your chances of a sale significantly just by taking care of those kind of things.
Right. So since we are talking about site speed, how does page speed affect the overall site performance?
In terms of rank, I don't think that page speed itself is a ranking factor. I think if there is somewhere in the ranking factor, it's within the time to first byte. Recently, there's the Core Web Vitals that Google's put out, but I think if you were just to worry about TTFB, you're going to pretty much cover all the other issues that come along with that. So I'm not sure that I'm a believer that when Google says that paint or shift, that those are anything kind of significant. It's probably more along the lines of, remember when they said that you need to have secured sites, that you need to have an SSL certificate, and everybody just kind of went out, okay, and they got a crappy one, and nothing really happened. Even with sites that really didn't even have one. So I think it's more along those lines. Potential negative, or could hold you back a little, but not anything that's going to be a positive. It's going to help you rank better.
Awesome. So can you share with us your favorite content marketing tip, by the way?
Favorite content marketing team?
Your tip about the content marketing.
Well, I'm sorry. What are you looking for here? Like, where do we get our content from?
Yes, it's sort of like that. Yes. Or your favorite content marketing strategy, by the way, to be exact.
The one thing that we found, so we have a couple content marketers that are in-house, and then they do manage an external team. So people from different parts of the world that are writing, and then the ideas that it kind of comes through then an editing process. Something that I've found is that one person can only write about a topic so many times. One writer, let's say you've got water heaters. You got a website about water heaters. One writer can only write, a handful of articles about water heaters before they want to kill themselves.
Right.
And, it's just your brain can't do that. Your brain can only write so much, but one editor can edit a lot. So let's say whatever language you're working in, what I've found it's easy. One of the best things to do is find as low cost content as you can. So that doesn't necessarily need to be a native speaker, but then for the language that you want, have an editor edit. And the brain power it takes to edit is so much less than it is to create. And so get the creation done as cheaply as you can, and then have somebody that's a native English speaker, or native whatever language you're looking for speaker to do the edit. And I think you'll end up with it's a more cost-effective way to get your content done.
Okay. So do you recommend blogging for your website? If so, how many posts do you recommend a week or a month?
So I like the idea of posting content that's in your traffic tier. So determining what level of traffic Google trusts you for, and then posting content within that's not necessarily SEO'd, but the idea that it's going to get traffic on its own and then raise up your traffic level. So the amount that you want to post is dependent upon how risk adverse you are. This is a technique that will never get you in any trouble. You'll build out good sites. You'll get natural traffic. You don't necessarily even have to SEO these pages. The more you do that, the less SEO you have to do, the fewer links you have to build, and the less susceptible you become to any kind of update. You'll never get hit by any update doing this. So if you are extremely risk adverse, meaning you want no risk at all, I'd be posting at least once a day within content that's within my correct tier. I would then lessen that, the more risk I like, and I'd spend my money on other things. So if you're all in and you don't care, then don't post at all, then just do as many links as you can buy with your budget. If you are extremely risk adverse, don't spend that much money on links, or maybe no money on links, and then spend it more on the content and post once a day or even more. And so that's the balance. It depends on how much risk you can accept, looking at your budget, and then basically either you're buying content within your budget or you're buying links within your budget, and then it just kind of shifts depending on how much risk you want to assume.
Okay, it makes sense. And anyway, in regards to keyword research, what are the tools you recommend for keyword research and on-page SEO?
For keyword research, I'm not sure it really matters. Any tool you like, I think. Anything that you can pump out keywords that are within the criteria that you're looking for. So it kind of depends on what your goals are. And then just getting kind of comfortable with whatever makes sense to you. The best tool is the one you're going to use. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And then the one that, if you're training up people to be part of your team, the one that they will also use. So it has to be something that people want to be involved in. And once you get there, pretty much within any tool, I think you can get a very good system for finding the types of terms that you're looking for. After that, obviously the best on-page tool is PageOptimizer Pro. There's no way around that. I think for the money, for the cost, because our lowest plan is $20 a month, and you don't have to. You could start the subscription and get the credits. And you can cancel your subscription. We don't take away your credits. For the money, because you're getting enterprise level data at about, I think, $1.60 a report is what that comes out to. So for $1.60, you can get enterprise level data for your on page. I don't think there's any tool that can beat that price. And we're also doing it where it's as easy or as difficult as you want it to be, meaning we have our regular strategy, which basically tells you, all right, these sections and put these terms here. But then you can also go into our advanced strategies if you're a more advanced SEO, and we'll show you all the data. And then we'll also show you different strategies. Because if you're more advanced, then you know that there are certain situations where you might need to be more aggressive, or certain situations where you might need to be more conservative. And we'll help you make suggestions based on that as well. So we have one mode that's kind of like having a high-level SEO over your shoulder, saying these are the decisions a high-level SEO would make. And then we open it up completely to, you can create the strategy that you need based on your particular situation. So,
Oh,
but within that, I think you can find a way to do SEO that's going to be effective. So for the price point and the effectiveness, I don't think there's a tool that's going to be any better.
right. So when doing on page, Kyle, what is your biggest problem you encountered, and how do you resolve it?
One of the biggest things you run into is just coming into the middle of a website, wherever it's at, and um, dealing with how a page can be created. If you're coming in and working with a company, for example, they might have a specific system on how they've got pages that need to be created. And so figuring out how to do that effectively, because when it comes to content creation, the key is consistency, getting it out regularly, and also within time and budget constraints. So brainstorming how to get the content up and out is probably the biggest logistical thing. If you can effectively solve that, if you're working on your own site, or you have more control over a particular site, the easier that becomes. Because I think really, if you have the method for creating the content and getting it how you want it, getting it up on the site is usually the hardest part, which is weird. But if you can solve that problem, then you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay. So what kind of red flags are there when hiring SEO agency, and what specifications you like when hiring an SEO agency?
Well, I think transparency has to be the number one thing. Are they showing you all the work that they're doing? And again, depending on your risk level, if you like PBNs, then they should be able to show you the PBNs that they're purchasing. If you don't like PBNs, they should be able to show you that this link is not a PBN link. So transparency, showing you where all your money is being spent, and keep in mind that some money is spent on admin fees. I mean, that's just it's a business, so that's just how that goes. Whenever you work with a professional agency, whether that's a doctor or a lawyer or a good SEO agency, there are admin fees involved in all that. And so seeing how your money is being spent and seeing that we did this and we got that, that doesn't mean that it's going to be effective, but it's just that that this was the plan. The plan was implemented, and now we can gauge the output. I would also make sure that you're talking to an agency that is looking down the road. SEO is not a 1 month thing. It just can't be. It's not going to fit within a 4-week schedule. So being able to look at least things in maybe a 3-month sprint or 6-month sprint, so that that you're not changing the strategy every month or trying to figure out the strategy every month. You're actually looking at a longer term play is a good thing to do.
Yeah, same here. So I also never hire a company that could call me. So yeah, I don't. And also, I never hire a company offers any type of guarantee ranking or something like that.
There can't be. Really, when it comes down to it, I mean, you might get to number one, but you might not. And you need to have strategies that can account for that. And usually, getting to number one isn't necessarily the goal, because that's only on one keyword. If you're focused at looking at one keyword, you're going to miss actually what's going on a website, because pages will rank for hundreds, if not thousands of keywords and have all these impressions, and they should be getting clicks. And if you're only looking at one particular keyword, you're probably missing where the majority of the traffic is coming from, and you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Awesome. So in regards to the time frame, usually when is the good time for, let's say for example, an e-commerce website from scratch and then make it profitable? So how long usually it could start to see result or start to see improvement for your understanding?
Part of the tricky part there is that your brand new site and whatever your money keyword is, that's going to take a long time to win, because you're probably not in a brand new niche where there's no competition. And there isn't anything such as a Google sandbox, but there are competitors. The idea is that you have to get your site up to a level to be with those competitors. That's, I think, what people see as the sandbox. The way around that is to post regularly, going after those longer keyword phrases. Some long tail phrases, but just long phrases in general. They usually have lower competition. So what I would recommend doing is build that page for that money keyword that you might not win anytime soon, but then support that page with longer phrase keywords that you actually have an opportunity to win, because those can start to trickle in traffic for you, and it's the correct traffic and can lead to sales faster than just trying to jam it in. So if you're doing a long-term play, meaning I'm building this site, I'm looking at it for a couple of years as an investment, I would do it that way, where I'm building out all that content, realizing that this is a 12-month play probably to get into the game before I'm going to really worry about making money off of it.
Okay, so I have an out-topic question. What's your best SEO accomplishment? Maybe it's about the fastest keyword you rank or the hardest keyword you rank.
Well, perhaps the lorem ipsum is the number one thing. I am most known for that. But what was fun after I did that, so that was 2018. A lot of people said, it can't be done again. Google's seen it, so they've adapted the algorithm. You can't do it again, and also you can't do it because of this reason or that reason. So in 2019, I did a speaking circuit tour where I spoke in LA, in Bali, in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and then also in Milan in Italy. And in each of those places, I ranked a page on page 1 using lorem ipsum, and showing that now it's still an algorithm. This still works. What was really funny too is I was on stage in Milan, and I guess the speaker before me gave this whole talk about BERT, because BERT had just came out and how BERT changed everything. And the first question was, now that BERT has come out, is this completely changed? And I was like, did you just see the talk that I gave? No. And like on one of the pages too, like BERT rolled through, right? And I was ranking number 1 for a term in Garden Grove. Garden Grove is part of Los Angeles. It's right next to where Disneyland is. And the only thing that changed on BERT is I went from the number 1 spot to the number 1 spot and the number 2 spot. Like, the only thing that changed was that now I'm ranking for more. So, and that's because this touches the core part of the algorithm. This is that middle area that Google can't change because it's not cost effective for them to change it. So that I think was perhaps doing it, showing it, and then doing it again, and kind of going against what people said could or could not be possible. I think that was a pretty big accomplishment.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about PageOptimizer Pro or POP?
Sure. So yeah, it's an on-page tool, and we're just looking at on-page only. It works in 61 languages. If there's a language that you have that you don't see, let us know, but it's probably somewhat obscure. The only thing, there's one kind of note on that, is that we do use Google's NLP API, and that's on our higher plans, and that's limited to what Google will use. And I think Google's only in maybe 8 or 9 languages there. So there are a lot of common languages that are just not included. So that's the only thing that isn't part of what we're doing, but everything else you can do within POP. As I mentioned, we have kind of 2 modes. So if you are looking, just tell me what to do, like the just tell me what to do mode, we've got that. And to be honest, that's how our agency starts. We actually start with that mode, let the page hit, go maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll come back through, and then we'll go into the more advanced mode and find those small little edges. But also though, if you are the kind of person like, I know what I'm doing and I want to make my own strategy, we have that for you as well, where we can say, okay, based on the data and your approach, your strategy and the aggressiveness that you want to go, this is what we would recommend. And even from there, you can still create your own custom plan. So you can go from as hands-off as possible to as hands-on as you'd like within that. And so we're looking at very specific areas because we know through the testing that these are the places that consistently move the needle. These are things that are almost always going to affect your on-page. And so those are the recommendations we're going to give for those specific signal or factor areas. But yeah, it's been great. So we started in 2017 with POP. And it's grown each month, which has been great. We continue to test and we continue to tweak. And what's really nice about it too is that, a couple things. One is we're not giving averages. People get confused thinking, oh, you're just giving an average of the page 1 or something like that, and that's actually not what we're giving at all. We start with that as a roadmap, but then there's a whole algorithm that we have that we've built to then find the areas where you can get edges. That's what we're looking for, is a place where you can get an edge on your competitors, and those are the recommendations that we give. The other thing is that people talk about, like, well, when Google changes in their update, does that mess everything up? And actually, we love update changes, because we now have a report from before the update and a report now after the update, and we can see what's changed. So we can constantly stay on top of Google updates for our clients, or and the people that use POP can do that as well, by saying, like, this is where the goalposts were, and this is now where the shift has happened. And then you actually have a plan where you can actually then, so you're not just like, what should we do? You can actually be pretty scientific about it. Say, like, you know what, okay, these are the tweaks, so that we know, at least for our on page, there might be off-page signals, obviously, but for our on-page, we can make these changes, and we're good. Or what's even more reassuring is knowing, like, oh, we don't need to change anything. Our on-page is actually good, because there's always that question, like, what should we change? What should we do? But if you run it again and realize that for on-page factors, nothing has changed, that's a huge relief, because then you can spend your focus, your time, your money, your efforts on something else, and not waste time, money, and effort on something that actually you could harm yourself by tweaking the wrong thing.
Awesome. Guys, so if you are looking to use POP or PageOptimizer Pro, you can just click the link below. So Kyle, how POP different from Sorper SEO?
Well, POP is original, so we don't use APIs. We're not using anybody else's math. Like, what we're doing is ours. So we're not reliant upon anybody else from doing anything. One thing that Surfer's done extremely well is it's a beautiful tool. It looks very, very pretty, and they do a very nice job with their output. What we're focused on is getting you to rank better. And that's what we think the big difference is between PageOptimizer Pro and Surfer, is that because it's our algorithm and it's our tests, and nobody else has access to those, and we're not reliant upon anybody else to get our data, we think that's where the edge is, so that anytime there is an update change, we're already on top of it. And we continue to innovate. We're adding to POP every quarter with new features that actually just make it more effective, give you access to more data, because we're pulling all that data in ourselves.
Awesome. Okay. So Kyle, what do you read, and where do you go to stay on top of SEO?
Well, the biggest thing is doing tests. And so that's where IMG comes in, Internet Marketing Gold, which is a group that I co-founded, where each month we're publishing 10 different tests on Google's algorithm. We have a group of testers. So they're all peer-reviewed, meaning that somebody has reviewed somebody else's work. So it's not just one person telling you, I did this and this is how it is. It's actually very smart people looking at it and seeing what's going on, and then having a discussion about it. And what's great too is in the community is that everyone can be involved in that discussion, so that people can be involved in, like, how do you apply this, or what does this mean, or what can we do with it? And then that's a lot of fun. Within that community as well, though, are also courses. So I think we're $84 a month. You have access to 18 courses, including my newest course on White Hat SEO that we launched last month. And then Ted Kubitis, who has Quora, has a course on link building as well within that. So within the community, this is how you stay on top of SEO, is that you've got a way to see what's happening in Google right now, and then actually take that and apply it and learn through courses. And I completely forgot, we also have developed a Google update predictor. So anytime that there's a potential update coming, we actually get advanced notice of that. SEO weather tools look back. They'll say, like, oh, 2 days ago there was an update, because they can see that movement. But the tool that we've developed within IMG actually looks ahead and says, in 2-3 days there's going to be an update. And that's important, because then let's say it's Black Friday, or a holiday season, you can reduce your SEO or increase your PPC spend. So you can, knowing that there might be some disruption. If you're about to launch a new SEO campaign, I'd hang off, because during updates like that, indexing stops. So you might want to focus on other things that you can do. Maybe bump up your social media posts. Take that content, put it on social media first to get eyeballs on it, so that at least it's getting out there, rather than relying on normal indexing for your site. So those are the things that we have within. Oh, and the top 100 factors too. Each week we publish, these are the top 100 factors based on tens of thousands of reports that have been run within Quora. As you can see, kind of how Google is moving, like what's more effective, what's less effective, which you can also use in the short term. So that as you launch a page, or you launch a campaign, or you get something going, that you can focus on, like, let's focus on these factors right now, because these are kind of drifting towards the front versus other things you might normally do when you launch a page.
Awesome. Okay. So Kyle, one last question. What is your advice for people who are struggling with on-page SEO?
So my advice would be create a site that is not your main site. Create a test site. And the reason that I would recommend doing that is that you can then have something that you're not worried about monetizing, but you can just try out for SEO. And maybe do it something that you kind of like, maybe a hobby, so at least you don't mind writing about it, because that's the worst is writing about something that's boring. But then do it. You're actually doing SEO, and if you can take away the kind of the concern about monetization, it frees you up to try some things. So then, you hear somebody talk about a technique, you want to try it, you have a place to try it first before you take it to a site that you actually care about, that you're trying to monetize. I think you'll end up doing more SEO. I think you'll end up doing better SEO, and overall, it turns into just cycles of good. And then often those sites that you're doing that, they actually often take off and start to generate revenue on their own. So essentially, you're paying yourself to learn, and there's nothing better than that. The money, the time you invest in learning could actually pay you back.
Awesome. Okay. So before we end, what is the best way to reach you out or to reach out to you, and how can our viewers connect with you, Kyle?
Sure. The PageOptimizer Pro, if there's a question that gets to support and they don't know if it's a little more of an SEO question, that gets to me. Internet Marketing Gold. We do have a Facebook group that's free. The Internet Marketing Gold is a paid group, and it's paid from when you get in, but there's a free section you can hit us on as well on Facebook. Then my email is kyle@hvseo.co. You can always hit me there too.
Okay. So Kyle, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And of course, for sharing your time with us. I'm hoping you'll all enjoy and highly recommend to follow Kyle's website at hvseo.co and PageOptimizer Pro and also Internet Marketing Gold. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Guys, thank you so much. Kyle, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I hope we can have a second interview with you soon. Take care, Kyle.
Perfect.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.